Duke Edmund signed away his son's future with the same pen Helena had given him on their wedding day. Then he handed that pen to his nephew and ordered 11-year-old Arthur removed from the family table. Helena watched her child endure the laughter of relatives who had spent years living on revenues she had protected. Edmund accused her of concealing Arthur's questionable birth and declared that every estate would pass instead to his nephew, Julian. He had chosen his moment carefully. Helena's father was abroad, her household staff had been replaced, and the marriage settlement securing her income had mysteriously vanished from the family archive. But Edmund had forgotten who had untangled Blackthorne's boundaries when creditors nearly dismantled the estate. Helena knew every lease, entail, and forgotten obligation beneath his land. That night, she opened the abandoned estate chapel and removed a duplicate register hidden behind her late mother-in-law's memorial plaque. One page had been cut away recently. On the next remained a single line in faded ink. If the lawful heir is denied, Blackthorne returns to the crown. Hours earlier, nearly 80 relatives, tenants, magistrates, and neighboring landowners had filled Blackthorne's great hall for Arthur's birthday. The boy's cake stood untouched on the sideboard. Its 11 candles had not been lit. Arthur remained beside Helena as Edmund's solicitor opened the succession register. Across the table, 17-year-old Julian Ashcombe rose beside his mother, Lady Cecilia. The young man wore a satisfied expression that suggested he had known of Edmund's decision long before that evening. "My Grace," Mr. Vale said uneasily, "the dukedom itself must descend according to its patent. No private declaration can prevent Lord Arthur from succeeding." "I am not changing the patent," Edmund replied. "Arthur may inherit an empty title if the law insists upon it. Julian will receive the land, houses, revenues, and influence that make Blackthorne worth possessing." A murmur moved through the hall. Helena understood what Edmund intended. He could not easily remove Arthur from the title, so he meant to separate that title from every unentailed asset supporting it. Arthur would inherit a name burdened by debt, while Julian controlled the family's wealth. "On what grounds?" Helena asked. Edmund finally looked at her. "Arthur was born 9 months after I departed for Lisbon. You returned to Blackthorne during that journey. There is no official record of such a visit, because it would have exposed your unauthorized absence from the diplomatic party." Several guests lowered their eyes. Edmund's face hardened. "Your memory serves your interests. My memory serves the truth." He placed a physician's declaration on the table. Dr. Harcourt, a man who had never treated Helena, claimed that the timing of Arthur's birth raised doubts about his parentage. "Summon him," Helena said. "He died last month." Helena looked toward Cecilia. Her sister-in-law's fingers tightened around her wineglass before she deliberately released it. "Look at your son," Helena told Edmund. "Look at him and repeat your accusation." Arthur raised his head. He had Edmund's gray eyes, but none of his father's cruelty. Edmund glanced at the boy, then turned toward the register. "Record that Arthur will receive no unentailed Blackthorne property." Mr. Vale hesitated. "I must advise caution. Several of the northern estates remain subject to older settlements and mortgages. My decision has been made." Julian extended his hand for the wedding pen. Helena saw him smile as he took it. That smile troubled her more than Edmund's anger. Julian appeared neither surprised nor nervous. He had expected to receive Blackthorne. Vale reluctantly entered Edmund's declaration in the register. When he turned the page, Helena noticed a narrow strip of newer parchment pasted over the description of the northern properties. The ink closely resembled the original, but the boundary numbers were wrong. Helena knew those numbers. When she married Edmund, Blackthorne had been close to foreclosure. Conflicting leases filled its archive. Creditors claimed farms that had already been sold, and several boundary maps had been ruined by damp. Helena had spent 12 years rebuilding those records. One of the altered parcels had never belonged to Blackthorne. "Who prepared these deeds?" she asked. "Julian recovered them from the archive," Edmund answered. "And you signed them without verifying the boundaries?" "My nephew understands his family's interests. He understands them remarkably well for a boy who supposedly learned of his inheritance tonight." Julian's smile disappeared. Cecilia rose. My son will not be insulted by a woman whose own conduct has placed Arthur's birth in doubt. Helena turned toward her. You are wearing my late mother-in-law's pearls. You have placed your son in my child's seat. Do not mistake possession for ownership. Edmund struck his palm against the table. Enough. Until Arthur's parentage is resolved, you and the boy will occupy the East Lodge. Your allowance is suspended. Julian will supervise the archive and estate correspondence. There was the purpose beneath the public humiliation. Edmund wanted Helena separated from the records before she could discover what Julian and Cecilia had changed. 2 footmen approached Arthur. No one touches my child, Helena said. They stopped immediately. Helena faced the guests who had watched Edmund disgrace her son. Some appeared ashamed. Others had laughed when Julian claimed Arthur would soon learn how ordinary boys lived. You were invited here so my husband could turn suspicion into truth through your silence, Helena said. Remember what you witnessed. You saw no proof of adultery. You saw a father use his son's birthday to strip him of his home. She removed the ducal keys from her waist and laid them beside Edmund's plate. You have mistaken my silence for dependence. Now you may discover the difference. Helena took Arthur's hand and left the hall. By the time they reached her apartments, unfamiliar servants were searching her desk. Her correspondence and working ledgers had already been removed. The locked case containing her marriage settlement was empty. Arthur watched them pack his clothes. Will father truly leave me with nothing? Helena knelt before him. Your father can surrender his own honor. He cannot surrender yours. After Arthur had been taken to the East Lodge with Helena's maid, she wrapped herself in a dark cloak and crossed the frozen courtyard alone. The abandoned chapel stood beyond the kitchen garden. Years earlier, Edmund's mother had told Helena that Blackthorne's oldest property register had never been kept in the main archive. The late Duchess had feared that a single dishonest heir might alter the family records. Helena entered through a loose sacristy window and approached the memorial plaque. Behind the carved stone rose, she found the duplicate register. Dust covered its leather binding, but the page concerning Arthur's inheritance had been disturbed recently. One sheet had been cut away, leaving fresh fibers along the inner seam. The following page carried the surviving warning. If the lawful heir is denied, Blackthorne returns to the crown. The sentence did not yet reveal which properties were affected or what legal process would be required. That information had almost certainly appeared on the missing page. But it proved one thing. Cecilia and Julian had known Edmund's declaration could endanger the estates. They had removed the clause and allowed him to sign anyway. A floorboard creaked behind Helena. She closed the register and turned. Someone had locked the chapel door from the inside. Helena held the register against her chest. Another floorboard creaked near the vestry. Who is there? Mr. Vale stepped from behind the rude screen. Mud stained his boots, and his coat hung open as though he had entered in haste. You should not be here, Your Grace. Neither should you. His gaze settled on the register. Did you find the covenant? I found what Julian failed to remove. Vale looked toward the locked door. Then we have little time. Lady Cecilia ordered the chapel searched before dawn. Helena studied him. You crossed Arthur's name from the property register. Because refusing before 80 witnesses would only have cost me my position, Edmund would have replaced me with someone less cautious. You still obeyed him. Yes. Vale did not defend himself, and I will answer for it. But I warned him that the northern deeds contained altered boundaries. He refused to delay the transfer. Who changed them? I cannot prove it. Julian brought the documents from the archive, but Cecilia was present whenever Edmund signed. A dull impact sounded against the chapel door. Helena opened the register. The missing page had likely explained which properties were affected and how the crown could enforce the covenant. Without it, the surviving sentence was only a warning. Is there another copy? The original settlement may be held among the crown's land records, Vale said, but your marriage trustees must act first. Edmund transferred properties securing their mortgages without consent. A second blow shook the door. Vale pulled aside the old confessional, revealing narrow stone steps descending beneath the chapel. Helena tore neither page nor binding. Instead, she copied the surviving sentence and the register's reference number onto a blank sheet from Vale's pocketbook. If she damaged the original, Cecilia could accuse her of altering it herself. They descended into the passage and emerged behind the eastern stables. Helena's groom waited with a horse, but the boy she had sent toward Wexford remained beside him. "The gates are guarded," he said. "His Grace has forbidden anyone to leave." Edmund had moved quickly, but he had forgotten how well Helena knew Blackthorne. Years earlier, she had ordered removable stones built into the kitchen garden wall to release floodwater. Edmund had mocked the expense. That forgotten opening now allowed Helena, Arthur, and 2 loyal servants to leave without passing through a gate. They reached Wexford House shortly after dawn. Helena's father was still abroad, but his chief solicitor, Mr. Pembroke, received them. 2 other trustees named in her marriage settlement joined him in the library. The original document had never been kept at Blackthorne. Only a working copy had vanished from Helena's desk. Pembroke opened the settlement and placed the property schedules beside Helena's copied boundary numbers. "Your marriage portion purchased the mortgages on these estates," he explained. Edmund was permitted to retain their income while he met the interest and preserved the properties as security. And if he transferred them without trustee consent, the trustees may demand immediate repayment and petition Chancery to restrain any further transaction. Helena looked at the figures. Edmund had repaid none of the principal in 7 years. Then file the petition. Pembroke hesitated. "An injunction will freeze rents and estate accounts until the court determines ownership. Blackthorne has hundreds of tenants who depend upon winter grain and repairs. I will guarantee their wages and provisions from my separate income," Helena said. "Freeze Edmund's authority, not the village's." Arthur stood quietly near the fire. "Will this take the houses away from father?" he asked. "No," Helena answered. "It will prevent him from giving them away until the truth is examined." Pembroke compared the altered property description with an older survey map. "One boundary number does not belong to Blackthorne," he said. "This parcel is crown land." Helena pointed to the 4 surrounding estates. "And each stands along the proposed Northern Meridian Railway route." The solicitor examined the transfer deed more closely. Attached to it was a schedule granting Julian not only the land but every mineral right beneath it. "This was not written to settle a family inheritance," Helena said. "Someone intends to sell what lies beneath those villages." A clerk entered carrying records requested from the local bank. 3 months earlier, Northern Meridian had paid a substantial advance into a trust established under Cecilia's maiden name. The transfer had been made long before Edmund publicly questioned Arthur's birth. Helena placed the bank record beside the missing page reference. Cecilia and Julian had not taken advantage of Edmund's accusation. They had prepared it. Pembroke began drafting the Chancery petition. Before noon, a messenger arrived from Blackthorne carrying Edmund's formal demand that Helena return with Arthur and surrender every document she had removed. A second letter lay beneath it. It bore no signature. "Withdraw the injunction, or the record proving Edmund returned from Lisbon will disappear before sunset." Helena folded the threat and handed it to Pembroke. "They have just admitted that record exists." The anonymous threat gave Helena something more valuable than fear: confirmation. Only a person involved in Arthur's removal would know that evidence of Edmund's return from Lisbon still existed. Mr. Pembroke sent the Chancery petition to London with copies of the altered deeds, the mortgage schedules, and the Northern Meridian payment. Until the court responded, the trustees formally notified Edmund that any further transfer of the northern properties would be challenged. Edmund arrived at Wexford House that afternoon with Cecilia, Julian, and Mr. Vale. "You have no authority to freeze Blackthorne," he told Helena. "The trustees do. You transferred mortgaged estates without their consent. My debts to your family were settled years ago. No, my marriage portion purchased them from your creditors. The principal remains unpaid." Pembroke placed the original settlement before him. Edmund read the relevant clause, then turned toward Vale. "Did you know this? I warned you that the northern estates were restricted," Vale replied. "You refused to examine the settlement." Cecilia stepped forward. "Helena is using an old debt to steal your inheritance. The properties were already in danger," Helena said. "I am preventing Edmund from giving them to your son." She placed the bank record on the table. Northern Meridian paid your trust 3 months ago. Why? Cecilia barely glanced at it. Repayment of a private loan. Then produce the loan agreement. That is none of your concern. It became my concern when Edmund accused Arthur of illegitimacy and transferred the same land your trust was paid to obtain. Edmund looked at his sister. You told me Northern Meridian had not yet made an offer. They paid only for Julian's assistance with preliminary surveys. Surveys of land he did not own? Cecilia did not answer. Helena saw Edmund's certainty weaken, but not enough to overcome his pride. Whatever Cecilia arranged, he said, Arthur's parentage remains unresolved. Then let us resolve it. Helena handed him the anonymous warning. Someone is threatening to destroy proof that you returned from Lisbon. I did not write this. I did not say you did. Edmund read it again. Helena watched him pause at the words, proving Edmund returned. He knew more than he had admitted. You returned to Blackthorne for 12 days, she said. Thomas Reed accompanied you. My former valet disappeared years ago. After he accused Cecilia of taking letters from my desk, Cecilia's voice sharpened. Reed was dismissed for theft. He was dismissed because Edmund chose your accusation over his testimony. Edmund placed the letter on the table. Even if I returned briefly, that does not prove Arthur is my son. No, but it proves you concealed information while publicly claiming no such visit occurred. Arthur entered from the adjoining room before Helena could send him away. Did you know you might have been here? He asked his father. Edmund looked at the boy. I knew it was possible. The admission silenced the room. Helena's voice remained controlled. Yet you told 80 witnesses there was no reason to believe you had returned. There is no official record, because you left your diplomatic party without authorization. You erased the journey to protect your career, then used that missing record to disgrace your son. Edmund did not deny it. Cecilia intervened. This changes nothing. A secret visit cannot establish paternity. It establishes that Edmund's accusation was not based on certainty. Helena replied. It was based on convenience. Arthur stepped back from his father. Edmund reached toward him, but the boy moved behind Helena. At that moment, a chancery messenger arrived with a temporary injunction. Until a hearing, Edmund and Julian were forbidden to sell, mortgage, collect mineral advances from, or alter the records of the disputed properties. Helena read the order aloud. Edmund had tried to place Blackthorne beyond her reach. Less than a day later, he could no longer control its most valuable estates. Cecilia took Julian aside, but Helena stopped them. The injunction also requires the preservation of every survey, deed, account, and boundary map. Julian's face tightened. Helena turned to Vale. Seal the archive before anyone returns to Blackthorne. I cannot, he said. Julian removed the Northern Survey books this morning. Where did you take them? Helena asked. Julian said nothing. Pembroke examined the payment record again. A reference beside Northern Meridian's transfer matched a survey station near Belmere. Helena knew the place. Thomas Reed had last been seen there after his dismissal. The missing survey books, the hidden journey to Lisbon, and the former valet had all led to the same village. Then a second messenger arrived from Belmere. Thomas Reed had been found alive, but before he could name the man who had paid him to disappear, Julian's agents had taken him away. Helena left Arthur at Wexford House under the protection of the trustees and rode to Belmere with Pembroke, Vale, and 4 guards. Edmund insisted on accompanying them. This concerns my son, he said. He became your son again only after the injunction threatened your estates, Helena replied. Edmund did not answer. At Belmere, the village steward confirmed that Thomas Reed had been living under an assumed name. He had worked as a clerk for Northern Meridian, copying survey measurements until he recognized several Blackthorne boundary numbers that had been changed. That morning, 2 men employed by Julian had forced Reed into a company wagon. Where were they taking him? Helena asked. Toward the old Blackthorne mine. Vale unfolded an earlier estate map. The mine had been abandoned decades ago, but Northern Meridian's recent survey line ended near its entrance. The group first searched Reed's rented room. Most of his papers were gone, yet Helena found a metal survey token beneath the desk. Its number matched the payment reference recorded beside Cecilia's trust. Edmund examined it. Cecilia said Northern Meridian was only studying a possible railway. They were paying her before Julian owned any land, Helena said. Whatever they found, she needed you to transfer the mineral rights before they could claim it. Inside Reed's account book, Helena found payments for tools, timber supports, and blasting powder. Northern Meridian had purchased enough material to excavate far more than a railway survey required. One entry mentioned a tunnel beneath Blackthorne Hill. Vale pointed to the older map. The abandoned mine passes near the family mausoleum, and the archive stands behind it, Helena said. If the surveyors had reopened the tunnel, Cecilia and Julian could have entered Blackthorne's records without using the main doors. That explained the stolen marriage settlement, the altered deeds, and the missing page from the chapel register. They reached the mine before evening. Fresh wheel tracks led inside, but part of the entrance had been blocked with timber. One of the guards found Reed's coat near the opening. Blood marked the collar. Edmund ordered the men to break through the barrier. Helena stopped them. There is blasting powder in these accounts. If the supports are trapped, forcing the entrance may collapse the tunnel. Years earlier, she had supervised drainage repairs after water flooded the northern fields. A ventilation shaft from the old mine had been preserved beneath a tenant's storehouse. They entered through that shaft. Reed was found bound in a side chamber beside crates of stolen estate records. He was injured but conscious. Julian took the survey books, he told Helena. He means to destroy them before the hearing. Why did Northern Meridian need Blackthorne's land? Reed pointed toward several stone samples on the floor. The railway is only a cover. They found coal and ironstone beneath the northern estates. The richest seam crosses Crown land, so they changed the boundaries and used Edmund's signature to make the claim appear lawful. Edmund looked at the stolen records. Cecilia told me the mineral income would restore Blackthorne. She intended to take the advance and leave you responsible for the fraud, Reed said. Helena found a bundle of letters in one crate. They proved that Julian had ordered Reed's capture, but none directly implicated Cecilia. The most important evidence was missing, the original survey showing the true boundaries. Where did Julian take it? Helena asked. To Blackthorne, Reed replied. There is another passage from this mine. It reaches the foundation beneath the archive. A sound traveled through the tunnel above them, the scrape of heavy crates being moved. Julian had not left. He was carrying the original survey into Blackthorne Hall, while the injunction was already in force. Then the smell of burning fuse reached the chamber. Julian intended to destroy the tunnel, the records, and every witness inside it. Helena ordered the guards to move Reed and the records toward the ventilation shaft. Edmund searched for the fuse, but smoke already filled the passage. The charge is above us, Reed said. Julian placed it near the archive entrance. Breaking through the timber would take too long. Retreating through the shaft would force them to abandon the evidence. Helena examined the drainage channel running beneath the tunnel. She had supervised its repair 9 years earlier after flooding damaged 3 farms. The channel continued beneath the eastern wall of Blackthorne and emptied beside the old mill pond. If the lower gate still works, we can divert water into the passage, she said. That could flood the mine, Edmund warned. It will soak the powder before it reaches us. Helena sent 2 guards through the drainage channel. Moments later, water began running across the tunnel floor. It rose quickly, reached the powder barrels, and extinguished most of the fuse. A smaller charge exploded near the archive entrance. The blast broke part of the ceiling, but did not collapse the main passage. It also opened the concealed route beneath Blackthorne Hall. Helena led the guards through it. They emerged inside a storage room adjoining the archive. Julian and 2 Northern Meridian workers were loading documents into crates. The original survey lay open on the table. Julian tried to burn it, but Helena knocked the lamp from his hand before the flame reached the paper. The guards restrained one worker. The other escaped through the corridor with Julian. Edmund moved to pursue them. Secure the evidence first, Helena ordered. He stopped. For 12 years, Edmund had dismissed her decisions as interference. Now his estates depended upon following one. The recovered survey showed the true boundaries of the northern properties. Northern Meridian had moved one boundary marker nearly 2 miles to include Crown land and the richest section of the mineral seam. Beside the survey lay metal dies for copying the Blackthorne seal, altered mortgage schedules, and the missing page from the chapel register. Vale compared the page with Helena's copied reference number. "The covenant does not automatically surrender every Blackthorne estate," he said. "It applies only to lands originally granted by the Crown to support the lawful heir." The wording was serious but limited. If Arthur's rejection had been completed through fraudulent deeds, the Crown could reclaim those specific lands pending judgment. Helena welcomed the clarification. The truth was damaging enough without exaggerating it. Reed then identified a travel account among the stolen papers. It recorded payments made during Edmund's secret return from Lisbon, fresh horses, a repaired carriage wheel, and treatment for a riding injury. The dates placed Edmund at Blackthorne when Arthur could have been conceived. Edmund read the account. "You knew this existed," Helena said. "I knew Reed kept expenses, but I believed the book had been destroyed. Did you ask for it before accusing me?" "No, because you wanted uncertainty, not truth." Edmund could not deny it. A guard entered with news that Julian had taken a carriage from the western gate. Cecilia had left shortly before him, carrying the signed mineral agreements. They were heading for London. Northern Meridian's contract required 3 approvals: Edmund's signature, Julian's claim to the northern estates, and permission to cross Wexford Meadow. That meadow belonged to Helena's marriage settlement. "They cannot complete the sale without me," she said. "They will forge your signature," Vale replied. "Then we will give them a reason to use it where witnesses can see." Helena ordered authenticated copies made of the survey, the travel account, the forged seals, and the injunction. The originals would remain under trustee guard. She then sent Northern Meridian a message stating that she was prepared to discuss selling Wexford Meadow if its investors delayed payment until she reached London. Edmund understood her plan. "You are drawing Cecilia into a meeting. I am making her bring every false document into one room." Reed examined the recovered payment ledger. Northern Meridian had scheduled the final transfer for noon the next day. Once paid into Cecilia's foreign account, much of the money could leave England. Edmund moved toward the door. "Then we leave tonight." Helena blocked him. "You will not come as my husband or as master of Blackthorne. What do you require?" "The truth, before the investors, the trustees, and Arthur." Edmund looked at the travel account that proved he had condemned his son while ignoring evidence in his own records. "If I testify," he said, "I will admit that I signed a declaration I knew was unsupported. Yes, I could lose my offices." "You were willing to make Arthur lose his future." Helena left him with the choice. Before she entered the carriage, a messenger delivered Northern Meridian's response. The company had accepted her meeting. Cecilia had also announced that Helena had agreed to surrender Wexford Meadow and produced a document already bearing her signature. Helena reached London shortly before Northern Meridian completed the transfer. Pembroke had already notified the company's bank that the disputed properties were under injunction. The bank agreed to hold the remaining funds for 1 hour, giving Helena time to challenge the transaction before the directors. The meeting was held at the residence of Sir Marcus Dane, Northern Meridian's chairman. Cecilia sat at the head of the table beside Julian. 12 investors, the company's solicitor, and several land agents were present. Sir Marcus objected when Helena entered with Edmund, Vale, Reed, Pembroke, and the 2 settlement trustees. "This is a private commercial meeting. It concerns property secured under my marriage settlement," Helena replied. "Your company cannot purchase access through Wexford Meadow without the trustees' consent." Cecilia placed the forged document on the table. "We already have Helena's consent." Helena did not challenge it immediately. Instead, she asked Sir Marcus to explain the transaction in full. Believing she intended to negotiate for a larger payment, he presented the deeds, boundary maps, mineral surveys, and payment schedules. The documents confirmed that Northern Meridian planned to extract coal and ironstone from beneath the 5 northern properties. The company had agreed to pay Cecilia's trust and Julian a substantial advance once Edmund transferred the estates. "When did negotiations begin?" Helena asked. 4 months ago, Sir Marcus answered. That was before Edmund questioned Arthur's birth, Cecilia interrupted. Julian's inheritance had been discussed privately for years. By whom? His uncle and me. Edmund spoke from the other end of the table. That is false. I did not decide to transfer the estates until Cecilia presented Dr. Harcourt's declaration. Sir Marcus turned toward Cecilia. You assured us the succession change had already been settled. She is trying to divide us, Cecilia said. Edmund signed the deeds and verified the boundaries. The company solicitor produced Edmund's genuine declaration. It stated that he had personally examined the original surveys. Helena placed the recovered survey beside Northern Meridian's altered copy. The differences were clear. The company map moved Blackthorne's northern boundary across Crown land and included the richest section of the mineral seam. This is not a minor error, Pembroke said. It is an attempt to sell mineral rights belonging to the Crown. Sir Marcus blamed Julian's surveyors. Reed then identified the company payments used to reopen the tunnel beneath Blackthorne. Vale presented the copied seal dies and the records recovered from the archive. The tunnel was used to remove original documents and replace them with altered copies, Helena said. Your company financed the work. I authorized a mineral survey, Sir Marcus replied. Not theft. Then your own accounts should identify who approved the additional payments. The payment schedule named Cecilia's trust as the recipient responsible for securing the deeds and suppressing competing claims. Cecilia dismissed it as a consulting arrangement. Helena finally examined the forged consent to Wexford Meadow. This document claims I signed before Northern Meridian's solicitor last week. Which solicitor witnessed it? A man at the table raised his hand. Did you see me sign? He hesitated. Lady Cecilia brought the document already executed. She said illness prevented you from attending. The two trustees produced Helena's grain orders from the same date, signed in their presence at Wexford House. Helena then wrote her name with the wedding pen and placed it beside the supposed consent. Her genuine capital H stood separate from the following letter. The forged signature joined them. The Meadow consent is false, Helena said. Without it, your railway has no southern access. Without the true boundaries, Julian does not control the mineral seam, and under the injunction, no payment may be released. Sir Marcus ordered the transfer stopped. Julian moved toward the door, but two court officers waiting outside prevented him from leaving. Pembroke served the injunction upon every director present. Cecilia still had one defense. She placed Edmund's genuine declaration before the investors. My brother verified the boundaries and approved the transfer. If any document was wrong, responsibility belongs to the Duke of Blackthorne, not to me or my son. Everyone turned toward Edmund. If he upheld the declaration, Cecilia could argue that she had relied upon the lawful owner. If he retracted it, he would admit that he had signed a statement he knew was false. Helena did not speak for him. Edmund had silenced her when the lie benefited him. Now he would have to choose the truth without her protection. Edmund stood before the investors with his false declaration on the table. I signed this document, he said, but I did not examine the original surveys as it claims. Cecilia interrupted. Helena forced him to say that. No one forced me to sign it, Edmund replied, and no one forced me to ignore the warnings I received. He admitted that Cecilia had promised the mineral agreement would restore Blackthorne's finances and reduce his dependence upon Helena's marriage settlement. She had told him Arthur's disputed birth would justify transferring the estates to Julian. I wanted both claims to be true, Edmund continued. They offered me money and authority without my wife's oversight. Helena placed the Lisbon travel account beside his declaration. You also knew there was a possibility Arthur was your son. Yes, yet you used the absence of an official record against him. Yes. Edmund then identified the second declaration as a forgery. Although Cecilia had copied his signature, its date proved she had prepared it before he publicly disinherited Arthur. Cecilia turned to Sir Marcus. You do not need Edmund's testimony. Julian holds the estates under signed deeds. The deeds are restrained by Chancery, Pembroke replied. They also transfer mortgaged property without trustee consent and include mineral rights outside Blackthorne's lawful boundary. Sir Marcus ordered the remaining payment cancelled. Northern Meridian's solicitor advised the directors to surrender the disputed records and cooperate with the court. Several investors demanded an independent examination of the company's accounts. Cecilia attempted to leave, but the court officers detained her for questioning over the forged consent and removal of documents under injunction. Julian was detained for abducting Reed, stealing estate records, and attempting to destroy evidence in the mine. Neither arrest depended upon a sudden confession. The recovered deeds, company payments, witnesses, and physical evidence already established the case. Sir Marcus still denied knowing that the surveys were false. Helena showed him a payment schedule authorizing additional money after Reed objected to the altered boundaries. The entry bore Sir Marcus's initials. "You paid Cecilia after your own clerk raised an objection," Helena said. "You cannot claim ignorance of a problem you paid to silence." The court officers seized Northern Meridian's ledgers before they could be removed. With the transaction stopped, Helena turned to the matter that had brought her there. The company's fraud does not resolve Arthur's name. Reed testified that he had accompanied Edmund back to Blackthorne during the Lisbon journey. The travel account supported his statement. Vale confirmed that Dr. Harcourt had never examined Helena and had submitted his declaration through Cecilia rather than through any official inquiry. There was no lawful judgment questioning Arthur's legitimacy, only Edmund's public accusation. Edmund signed a complete retraction before the trustees and investors. "My accusation against Helena was unsupported," he declared. "Arthur is my lawful son and the rightful heir to the Blackthorne title." Helena accepted the document but gave him no gratitude. "Truth is your duty," she said. "It is not a price that purchases forgiveness." The hearing ended with Northern Meridian's funds frozen and its mineral agreement suspended. Cecilia, Julian, Sir Marcus, and Edmund were ordered to appear before the Lord Chancellor. Edmund would not face the same charges as the conspirators, but his genuine signatures remained central to the fraud. He had transferred restricted estates, made a false declaration, and attempted to deprive his lawful heir of the property supporting the title. Before leaving, Cecilia addressed Helena from the custody of the officers. "You have stopped the sale. You have not won Blackthorne. The estates are still Edmund's." Helena opened the marriage settlement. The injunction had only prevented Edmund from selling the properties. It had not yet enforced the trustees' right to recover the unpaid mortgages. For 7 years, Edmund had paid interest, but none of the principal. His unauthorized transfer now allowed the trustees to demand the entire debt immediately. If he failed to repay it, every unentailed Blackthorne property could be placed in receivership and sold under the court's supervision. Edmund had tried to leave Arthur a title without land. By his own signature, he had brought himself within days of becoming a duke without an estate. The Chancery hearing addressed 3 questions: the validity of the northern transfers, the status of the mortgaged estates, and the protection of Arthur's inheritance. The criminal allegations against Cecilia, Julian, and Northern Meridian would be tried separately. Pembroke first presented Helena's marriage settlement. It showed that her marriage portion had purchased the mortgages that saved Blackthorne from foreclosure. The debt remained secured against every unentailed estate Edmund later attempted to transfer. Edmund's solicitor did not dispute the accounts. No principal had been repaid for 7 years. Vale testified that he had warned Edmund about the restrictions before the transfer. Edmund had dismissed the warning and signed without examining the original documents. The recovered survey established that the deeds included Crown land. The tunnel records, copied seals, and forged consent connected Cecilia, Julian, and Northern Meridian to the altered boundaries. Reed's travel account and testimony also proved that Edmund had returned to Blackthorne during his Lisbon journey. The Lord Chancellor addressed him. "Did you know this journey was possible when you questioned Arthur's legitimacy?" "Yes. Why did you conceal it?" "I had left my diplomatic party without authorization. I erased the visit to protect my position." "And later used the absence of that record against your wife and son?" "Yes." Edmund then admitted that he wanted the mineral agreement because it promised income independent of Helena's settlement. "I resented that Blackthorne had survived through her money and judgment," he said. "Cecilia supplied the accusation, but I chose to use it." His admission destroyed any argument that he had acted solely as an innocent victim of deception. The Lord Chancellor declared the transfers to Julian void. The disputed crown parcel was returned to crown control, and Northern Meridian was barred from claiming its mineral rights. Arthur remained Edmund's lawful son and heir. There had never been a legal judgment questioning his legitimacy, only a public accusation unsupported by evidence. The court then considered the mortgages. Because Edmund had attempted an unauthorized transfer and made a false declaration concerning the security, the trustees were entitled to demand immediate repayment. Edmund could not satisfy the debt. The normal result would have been the sale of the unentailed estates. Helena proposed another arrangement. The trustees will take possession rather than force an immediate sale, she said. Estate income will first maintain the villages, pay wages, and discharge the debt. The remaining revenue will be held for Arthur. Edmund will have no authority to sell, mortgage, or alter the properties." End quote. This protected the tenants while removing the power Edmund had abused. The Lord Chancellor examined the proposal. "Duke Edmund, do you contest the trustees' right to take possession?" Edmund looked at Arthur, seated beside Helena. "No." The court approved the arrangement. The unentailed Blackthorne estates passed into trustee management for Helena and Arthur. The entailed family properties remained attached to the title, but were placed under independent supervision, preventing Edmund from burdening them with further debt. Helena received authority over rents, repairs, leases, and village provisions as the trustees' appointed administrator. Edmund retained his title, but not the income or control he had tried to give Julian. The evidence against Cecilia and Sir Marcus was referred for prosecution on charges relating to forgery, fraud, and conspiracy to obtain crown property. Julian would answer separately for stealing records, abducting Reed, and attempting to destroy evidence in the mine. Edmund faced different consequences. His false declaration was referred to the relevant authorities, and he was suspended from his public offices pending review. He was also required to publish a full retraction of his accusation against Helena and Arthur. Helena requested one additional condition. The harm was committed before the families and tenants of Blackthorne. The correction must be made before the same people. The Lord Chancellor agreed. Edmund would return to the Great Hall, restore Arthur's entry in the property register, and confess that he had denied his son without proof. Before issuing the final order, the Lord Chancellor addressed Helena. "Once the trustees take possession, Blackthorne Hall will be under your administration. What provision will you make for your husband?" Only days earlier, Edmund had ordered Helena and Arthur into the East Lodge and suspended her income. Now Helena would decide whether he retained a home at all. "The East Lodge is suitable," Helena told the Lord Chancellor. "Edmund may live there for 1 year while he establishes an independent income. He will have no authority over the estates, their servants, or their tenants." The arrangement was approved. Edmund had ordered Helena and Arthur into that lodge when he believed them powerless. It now became the only Blackthorne residence he was permitted to occupy. The criminal proceedings concluded months later. Cecilia and Sir Marcus were convicted of fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to obtain crown property. Northern Meridian lost the disputed mineral rights and was ordered to compensate the affected landholders. Julian's age reduced his sentence but did not remove his responsibility. He was convicted of stealing estate records, abducting Reed, and attempting to destroy evidence. He surrendered the money held in Cecilia's trust and lost every claim to Blackthorne. Thomas Reed received compensation and protection. Mr. Vale remained solicitor under the supervision of Helena's trustees. Edmund was removed from his public offices after admitting that he had signed a false declaration. He sold his horses, club memberships, and personal collection to repay part of the Blackthorne debt. His most important obligation remained public correction. The same relatives, magistrates, tenants, and servants who had witnessed Arthur's humiliation were summoned to the Great Hall. The property register lay open on the table. Edmund entered alone, carrying the wedding pen. "I accuse Duchess Helena without proof," he said. "I denied my lawful son, while knowing that I had returned to Blackthorne during the possible period of his conception." He admitted concealing the journey, ignoring Vale's warnings, and signing deeds he had not examined. My sister exploited my resentment, but she did not create it. I wanted wealth beyond my wife's oversight. I chose an accusation that allowed me to remove her and impoverish Arthur. Edmund crossed Julian's name from the property schedule and restored Arthur's entry. Every loss I have suffered began with decisions I made freely. He turned to his son. You owe me neither trust nor affection. I will correct what I can without asking you to erase what I did. Edmund offered Arthur the pen. Arthur did not take it. Give it to Mother, he said. She protected Blackthorne when you tried to give it away. Edmund carried the pen to Helena. I once believed your strength diminished mine, he told her. I punished you because I was too proud to admit that Blackthorne depended upon your judgment. Helena accepted the pen but offered no comfort. What happens to our marriage? He asked. My solicitors will arrange a formal separation. My income, residence, and authority will remain independent of you. Will I be permitted to see Arthur? You may write to him once each month. Whether he answers will be his decision. Edmund bowed. I understand. You understand now because you no longer possess the power to ignore my decision. He left the hall without asking her to forgive him. Under trustee administration, Helena protected the tenants' leases and reorganized the estate accounts. The mineral seam was leased under strict safety and payment conditions, rather than sold. Its profits repaid the mortgages, funded village schools and infirmaries, and built Arthur's future trust. Arthur visited Edmund once before spring. Helena neither encouraged nor prevented the meeting. Their relationship would be determined by Arthur's choices, not by Edmund's regret. On Arthur's 12th birthday, the great hall opened again. This time, every candle on his cake was lit. After the celebration, Arthur brought the restored register to Helena. Where should we keep it? Helena opened the repaired archive. No single person would control it again. The most important records required 2 keys, one held by the trustees and one by the estate administrator. She placed the wedding pen inside a drawer. It no longer represented Edmund's promises. It was simply an instrument, and authority belonged to those willing to use it responsibly. Together, Helena and Arthur returned the register to the light. The East Lodge is suitable, Helena told the Lord Chancellor. Edmund may live there for 1 year while he establishes an independent income. He will have no authority over the estates, their servants, or their tenants. The arrangement was approved. Edmund had ordered Helena and Arthur into that lodge when he believed them powerless. It now became the only Blackthorne residence he was permitted to occupy. The criminal proceedings concluded months later. Cecilia and Sir Marcus were convicted of fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to obtain crown property. Northern Meridian lost the disputed mineral rights and was ordered to compensate the affected landholders. Julian's age reduced his sentence but did not remove his responsibility. He was convicted of stealing estate records, abducting Reed, and attempting to destroy evidence. He surrendered the money held in Cecilia's trust and lost every claim to Blackthorne. Thomas Reed received compensation and protection. Mr. Vale remained solicitor under the supervision of Helena's trustees. Edmund was removed from his public offices after admitting that he had signed a false declaration. He sold his horses, club memberships, and personal collection to repay part of the Blackthorne debt. His most important obligation remained public correction. The same relatives, magistrates, tenants, and servants who had witnessed Arthur's humiliation were summoned to the great hall. The property register lay open on the table. Edmund entered alone, carrying the wedding pen. I accused Duchess Helena without proof, he said. I denied my lawful son, while knowing that I had returned to Blackthorne during the possible period of his conception. He admitted concealing the journey, ignoring Vale's warnings, and signing deeds he had not examined. My sister exploited my resentment, but she did not create it. I wanted wealth beyond my wife's oversight. I chose an accusation that allowed me to remove her and impoverish Arthur. Edmund crossed Julian's name from the property schedule and restored Arthur's entry. Every loss I have suffered began with decisions I made freely. He turned to his son. You owe me neither trust nor affection. I will correct what I can without asking you to erase what I did. Edmund offered Arthur the pen. Arthur did not take it. "Give it to Mother," he said. "She protected Blackthorne when you tried to give it away." Edmund carried the pen to Helena. "I once believed your strength diminished mine," he told her. "I punished you because I was too proud to admit that Blackthorne depended upon your judgment." Helena accepted the pen but offered no comfort. "What happens to our marriage?" he asked. "My solicitors will arrange a formal separation. My income, residence, and authority will remain independent of you." "Will I be permitted to see Arthur?" "You may write to him once each month. Whether he answers will be his decision." Edmund bowed. "I understand. You understand now because you no longer possess the power to ignore my decision." He left the hall without asking her to forgive him. Under trustee administration, Helena protected the tenants' leases and reorganized the estate accounts. The mineral seam was leased under strict safety and payment conditions, rather than sold. Its profits repaid the mortgages, funded village schools and infirmaries, and built Arthur's future trust. Arthur visited Edmund once before spring. Helena neither encouraged nor prevented the meeting. Their relationship would be determined by Arthur's choices, not by Edmund's regret. On Arthur's 12th birthday, the great hall opened again. This time, every candle on his cake was lit. After the celebration, Arthur brought the restored register to Helena. "Where should we keep it?" Helena opened the repaired archive. No single person would control it again. The most important records required 2 keys, one held by the trustees and one by the estate administrator. She placed the wedding pen inside a drawer. It no longer represented Edmund's promises. It was simply an instrument, and authority belonged to those willing to use it responsibly. Together, Helena and Arthur returned the register to the light.